I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, September the 5th. And farming has resumed. I tell you, up in the Midwest, they're starting to go in there and harvest some of that corn, a lot of that high moisture corn, and they'll be delivering a lot of that right to those feedlots up there. And you're just hearing some unbelievable yields in spots. Very spotty, but you know, I've heard some guys talking about some yields that I've never heard of, just in small patches there, over 300 bushel to the acre. My gosh, I've never heard anything like that before. But even just honey holes that the guys have always done a test on, because you know, they get in competition with their neighbor and that's their best spot and they know that, but it's just blowing away what they've seen in the past. I know we talked all summer about how dry it was, mostly in Missouri, north central Missouri, northwest Missouri, southern Iowa, parts of northeast Kansas. Very, very dry. And yeah, there was a lot of guys that you know, chopped their corn down for silage or several weeks ago, and a lot of those zeroed out, didn't they? You know, they tested it and there was nothing there, and that's still going to make feed, but it wasn't dry everywhere, and they've got this these hybrids so good now that they're just unbelievably stout and can withstand a whole lot of adversity in the growing season. Down here in the southern plains, it's time to sow wheat. A lot of guys really would have rather waited another week or two to do that, but we got some forecasts of pretty strong chances of significant rain here the latter half of this week. So a lot of them got busy over the holiday weekend and the first part of this week sowing wheat, and if they can get that in and then get some moisture on top of it, wow, will they ever have some grazing. And I tell you what, guys, anymore just about everybody is growing wheat for the grazing. Maybe not grazing it plumb out, but that's the only way they can make it work, is to add some value somehow to it, and grazing on that hard red winter wheat is what about everybody does. But that would be better than waiting until after the forecasted rain and waiting for it to dry out again, and you get a crust on it. But if it works out right, there should be some good early prospects of wheat grazing there. But you get up into Kansas, they won't be doing that yet because they've got flooding up in there. Manhattan, Kansas, saw they had some pretty significant flooding. All in central Kansas. Get further up there into Nebraska, had some flooding. And that Kansas flooding, you know, it may not have been the moisture that it takes for some places, but there's just nowhere for it to go. It's so flat, and it takes a while for it to run off. But let's look at your cattle markets. Your Tuesday board there ended with October live cattle up $1.10 to end the day at 109.87. December was up $1.42, and we weren't really ready for this higher board. You know, you just expect it to be lower every day, and then when it comes out higher, everybody looking around wondering what's going on. But December was up $1.42 to end the day at 114.40. October feeder cattle up $2.70 at 151.82, and September up $2.27 at 151.72. And all of this year's contracts for that are offered on CME board there are over $1.50. And you look off into next year and into early spring, and they're all, to me, undervalued at 148. You know, I would think if you were going to have some pressure on some, it'd be these late fall contracts when you got a lot of these calves coming to town. And then the market's always good for feeder cattle right after the first of the year. And with all these grazing prospects and a lot fewer numbers, smaller calf crop coming to town, I would think that some of those contracts early next spring look to be undervalued. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't start going up significantly, especially as we start to see this fat cattle market turn around. We may have bottomed out last week. You look at the weighted average, last week's trade of only 66,600 head buying for the holiday shortened week, but they bought a whole lot less than just 1 day shorter a week. And if you look at the prices, they were lower. Most of your southern plains traded at 107. That was $2 lower. North Plains $2 lower, 107, 107 and a half, and $3 lower at 170. But your weighted average on live steers come out to be 107.18. That was down $1.84 from the previous week's weighted average. Your dress steers averaged $169.59, down $3.19 from the previous week's dress weighted average there. Nationwide, not a whole lot more on the fringes, guys. 76,200 head for the entire nationwide negotiated direct fat cattle trade, and about 10% of those for a 15 to 30 day delivery. But we know that we're going to be starting to come around a little bit. The show lists were not inflated as they come out early this week, which I don't really take a whole lot of stock in show lists, but what they did put out did not show that they were inflated because of the lighter trade, and the lighter trade from last week is probably going to have a bigger impact on the packers trying to keep these chain speeds up with these big margins than it is on your cattle feeders, which have been running fairly current anyway and looking forward to lighter numbers of market ready cattle. But look at your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on Beef Market Central late in the day on Tuesday sitting at 151 even, down just 8 cents, and that's pretty darn close to what your CME feeder cattle index is sitting at 150.62. Not a whole lot of big markets on Wednesday there, or on Tuesday. I mean, OKC West had their calf sale, about 800 head was all. Of course, everybody was kind of shut down over the long holiday weekend, and then of course it got wet in some spots. Some spots couldn't get any cattle out because it was wet, and some places decided to hold their cattle on because it was wet. But OKC West had a light run of calves, not well tested. Really looking forward to seeing what happens here on Wednesday as we get some good runs of those big Wednesday feeder cattle auctions and actually see what the heck this market is, because we've kind of lost track of it through the holiday here. Ozarks Regional Stockyards, West Plains, Missouri only had 1,500 on a Tuesday. That's a real light run for them. That's a high volume sale. Not well tested there. Of course, they were selling all classes, and that was one of the spots where the rain did curb some receipts, because you don't have any trouble getting them out there. It's so rocky, but it did green the pastures up a little bit, and guys are really wanting to hang on to the calves just a little bit longer. But this Saturday at Ozarks Regional Stockyards, they've got a special sale. They got a bunch of cows coming to town because it has been so dry down in that country, and even though it's greened up a little bit, guys are still going to have to cut back. And got one 450 head dispersal at Ozarks Regional Stockyards there, and got a couple hundred head of sheep on Saturday there at Ozarks Regional Stockyards, and I always enjoyed watching Randy Hoover sort cattle. He's one of the very best in the world I've ever seen at it. But I wouldn't probably like to watch. I'm gonna have to tune in to DV Auction, see if I can get a look at him sorting some sheep. But headed up north to Billings, Montana here middle of this week. I'll be coming from there on our next visit, going up to the U.S. Cattlemen's Association's Cattle Producers Forum, sitting on a panel for that meeting on Thursday, and looking forward to that. Got a lot of good people involved in that association, and looking forward to visiting with them, and a few guys up in that part of the country that maybe wouldn't normally be at that meeting, but coming to give me a hard time, and I'm looking forward to seeing them too. But let's look at a couple individual quotes on Tuesday. Bluegrass Stockyards, Lexington, Kentucky, sold 60 head of 963-pound steers at $140 on Tuesday. And Huron Continental Marketing in South Dakota sold 58 head of steers, weighed 851 at $156.50. That's your feeder flash for Wednesday.